Cool. So now we're getting to the 3 R's. So read. After you're doing your scanning and your questions, you have to read thoroughly, right? We want to make sure that we're purposefully looking how to answer some of these questions. Recite. So we're going to do a learning styles worksheet in a little bit. But not only reading, but reciting, because then you're saying it and you're hearing it will help you retain the information a lot more than just reading it. And obviously repetition is super important, so saying it over and over could help you, especially if you are an auditory learner. And then making sure that you review all the information, which especially after you take notes in class, to filter in some of those gaps that you may have with the book. So, okie dokes. Now we're going to go into note taking. Does anyone have any questions before I bulldoze on? Okay. Great. So, note taking basics. How do you know it's important? So I don't know about you, but the first time I started doing outlines for the chapters, it was a regurgitation sort of the chapter. I pretty much just typed everything that was in there, and it wasn't very beneficial. So by going through and looking at some of those bolded heading things, looking for key terms, that's a great way to try to figure out what you should be taking notes on, to sort of bring it down a little, so it's not like you just highlighting everything or writing everything down. It also helps you prepare for the lecture, like I said, so you're able to get some of those questions together to show your faculty that you actually did read. And then when your faculty member is lecturing, your ears will perk up because you've read through the chapter, you sort of know what's going on, and you can keep up with their pace. So, we already talked about rewriting your notes immediately after class to help with that retention. Okay, so creating an outline. And I'm going to have a picture in a few slides to show you an example of a really famous outline that a lot of college students use. But you want to create your outline before you go to class. This happens in the preview stage. So you're going to use your textbook with all those heading and subheadings. Look how the information is organized. Oftentimes, professors will lecture in the order of the textbook. So if you put your outline in that order, as they're speaking, you can just fill it in. And then, of course, making sure that you have a key term bank. Okay, so why should you do an outline? It is a skeletal view of the chapter, so by doing an outline, you can see a very broad, full picture of the entire chapter, which can be very beneficial, especially if you're a Y person. For a lot of people, to understand something small, they sort of have to have an understanding of everything, and so if that's you, then this will very much help as you go to study or when you go to class. So it increases your listening comprehension, which we've talked about like 8 times, and then it can create a reference guide, especially if your faculty member is one of the ones that likes to do a cumulative final, meaning that it's on all the chapters you've gone over. If you have outlines and you've been keeping up with them every chapter, when it comes to study, you have all of this as a reference, and you wouldn't necessarily have to go back digging through your books to find things. Okay. So has anybody heard of the Cornell style of note-taking? Yay! Okay. Have you ever used it?
Once in high school, yeah, my English teacher.
Okay, great.
Showed me how to use it.
Great. So this is an example of how to do a Cornell style of note-taking. Anyone here on Pinterest? Okay, yeah, okay. But there's a lot of examples on Pinterest. So if you ever need any type of, if these note-taking strategies don't work for you, Google or go on Pinterest, because let me tell you, I'm pinning stuff all day about note-taking strategies. But this one is pretty famous. So you're gonna write your main idea along the left side of the page. Those questions that we talked about, that's a great place to put those. And then on the right side is where you're gonna write those notes, some of the key words. You can draw pictures, formulas, and then you have a line. So it's like, then the bottom quarter, or third, depending on which based off your needs, is gonna be a summary of the notes in your own words. So that's great so that you can actually see how much of what you're writing down do you actually understand what it's saying. So the next slide has a very basic example. And so this person did it for chemistry. So they have their solids, liquids, and gases, some of the types of matter on the side, some notes, and then they're putting their summary after lecture. So immediately after their lecture, that's where they're gonna put in their own words, a brief summary. So, and you can see where there's spaces so that during lecture, they can fill in some of those holes. I know some students who will do their outline all in black, and then when they're in class, they take a different color ink, and everything they fill in class will be like red, so that they can tell the difference between what they added from class versus what they wrote themselves. And it is proven through research that different colors, if you're not colorblind, can help you when you're studying. It engages your mind. So if you're colorblind, I'm sorry. Okay, does anyone have any questions about anything we've talked about? Because now we're gonna do a brief little learning styles activity. Okay, cool.